because, well, before we actually discuss the incident itself, for me, there's like sort of three things around it that are more important and more interesting than the actual sort of who is at fault discussion.
Okay.
Because the most important issue about it is the safety, and that's that the Halo did its job. It was a massive impact for both cars, and both drivers got out of the cars and were fine. I know Valtteri had to go to the medical center and they checked him out. He's obviously a bit winded, but otherwise he was okay. And that's the most important thing. The most important thing about this is that a huge impact, huge accident, but both drivers were okay. You can see from the onboard footage that Russell's front left wheel is literally on the Halo. So if that hadn't been there, goodness knows what how different the situation would have been. If that was an accident that would have happened at old school Imola during, the Senna days or whatever, I think it would have been a very, very different story indeed. So that's the most important thing, is the safety.
Well, I just want to, while you're talking about the safety, how well the gravel played in that scenario as well, because it reduced the speed of those cars going into the barrier significantly, not by much, but at the end of the day, that was better than a grass runoff or a sponsorship. Those like sponsorship runoffs they have, definitely better. They scrubbed a lot of speed going through the gravel, and also, their cars didn't roll either.
Part of the complaint about gravel as well, of course, is that people say that it like flips the cars, but that just seems very circumstantial. Like it can do, but it doesn't necessarily. So the safety thing is the most important thing, and the news from that is good. Now the blame game as to like whose fault it is, I don't know. I just almost like don't care. It's just a boring discussion. I'm more concerned with the implications that are raised as a result of this incident, and one of them is what you've already touched on, which is that Bottas was just utterly uninspiring all weekend. He's fighting a Williams for track position on merit. I can't fault the way that he handled the incident at all. I don't think he did. I don't think he did anything wrong.
No.
Like when you look at some people claim that he moved right. Obviously, that's what Russell thought that he did.
He was on the racing line.
I can't see it. He's on the dry line. He's not doing anything wrong as far as I'm concerned. So I can't fault him on this incident. But what I can fault him is that Bottas, as far as I can remember, has always been incredibly mediocre in wet and mixed conditions, and that obviously hasn't changed. And the fact that Russell clearly had the pace to take the position and Bottas didn't, and whilst George is in a seriously inferior car, is damning enough. Like that is a damning enough indictment. As for Russell, his reaction to the incident was not a good look for him or his team.
It was shocking.
And I'm not talking about the immediate exchange either. He got out the car and had a little complaint to Bottas, and Bottas gives him the finger, and Russell tapped him on the helmet or whatever. That's a whole load of nothing as far as I'm concerned. Their blood is up. They've just had a big incident. Adrenaline's pumping. Obviously, they're going to be angry with each other. But the issue with Russell was that he kind of talked himself into a hole, complaining about gentlemen's agreements and Bottas not having enough respect for the speed they were going, and rather sort of childishly getting his side of the story out on Twitter first, only to inevitably have to reel it all back in with probably this and maybe that. None of it is relevant when he's still yet to actually score any points for Williams, despite now having a handful of opportunities to do so, not least of all, of course, at this very same track, only a year before, where he also ended up doing the walk of shame with his car half buried in a wall. So I really hope that Russell hasn't kind of started to believe his own hype and get in his own way. And I think that at the time of recording, I think he has now kind of given a bit more of a proper apology and realised that the way that he reacted was not okay. Maybe Toto has had a bit of a talking to with him. I think he just needs to drop it and move on and start producing results.
Yeah. I feel like I completely agree with everything you said. And the best thing Russell could have done was get out that car, check if Bottas was okay, and then walk back to the pits, because the fact that the Williams on merit had a reasonable chance of overtaking the Mercedes halfway through this race was brilliant for Russell. It was brilliant for Williams. The Williams is alongside the Mercedes. This is fantastic. The team would have been loving it. And if he had pulled off that move on that lap or 5 laps later, it would have been absolutely fantastic. We would be talking about this. We would have been talking about that overtake as if it was the main part of the podcast. And it would have been fantastic for Russell and really, really cemented his prospects for that Mercedes team. But just the reaction just almost did the opposite. It wasn't the mature Russell we've seen in the past. It was just a bit of a, yes, in the heat of the moment, you can't help what you do. But I've always learned in the heat of the moment, just keep yourself to yourself and give yourself 5 minutes before you say anything to anyone.
I don't understand why the Williams PR people didn't say to him, "Don't go and speak to the press. Don't so and so anything. Just keep it really simple." Why is nobody tapping him on the shoulder and saying,
"No,
give it a bit of time. Don't say anything to." He went in so heavy-handed and was going to make a complaint to the GPDA or whatever. No, you're just making yourself look silly. It's a bad look for him, and it's a bad look for the team.
The incident itself, I thought long and hard about this, and it's a racing incident at the end of the day. The track was dry and the track was wet. The grass was soaking. Russell caused the incident by putting one or two tires on the grass and spun his car and went into the side of Bottas. Whether he was doing that through reacting to a movement, which I couldn't see.
Yeah, I can't see. The only immediate movement he makes is one to the left.
Yeah, I think Bottas was just sticking to the racing line, which is the dry line, which is the safest line for that car at that time. It was so minute. It was so close. Like, I really do think it was a racing incident and no one was at fault. But just the way it was handled afterwards, he should have just taken himself back to the pits and gone, "Yeah, that was pretty big impact. I'm really sorry, Bottas. I caused it, but it was a racing incident. We move on, we learn." And then he would have been respected more for attempting to overtake the Mercedes. People would be looking into that. Oh, my goodness, the Williams was right next to the Mercedes. That's how good George is. He was just about to take over this. Oh, I was just about to say the second Mercedes driver, one of the Mercedes drivers. But no, he's made the situation 100 times worse. The PR team probably had a nightmare and had to retract everything and then write an official apology on multiple social media accounts because he didn't conduct himself in an appropriate way whatsoever. Now, it was a big impact. Like I said, it was just, don't know what else to say there is about it. But
yeah, he had every right to try and make that move.
Without a doubt.
He just didn't handle it particularly well. Obviously, he thought he saw something at the time. I can't see it myself on the broadcast, but it's easy for us to replay it and pause it and look at it.
I did a couple of times.
Fast, you obviously don't get to see it the same way. But yeah, the more interesting and more important than the blame game is, like you say, what happened afterwards. And we saw exactly the same maneuver happening at Tamburello all race long. And this was the only one that ended in a DNF. So that says something about the specific way that the overtake was handled. And the more interesting thing about it is that the implications for both Bottas and Russell are more bigger than the actual incident itself.
I think he said something on the lines of that 1 point doesn't mean much for Bottas, but it means a lot for Williams. Yeah, that may be the point. That may be true, but actually Bottas is not going to give up that position just because actually 1 point means more to you and Williams' team than it does the Mercedes team. I'm sure Bottas wants to score as many points as he does every single race, whether that be 2 points or 1 point. You don't know what's going to happen 20 races down the line. We've still got 21 races to go. Lewis could DNF twice this season and put Bottas straight back in it, or put Max in it. They're trying to scrape together every single point they can to keep themselves in it for as long as possible. So the fact that he was like, 1 point means so much more to Williams, don't know why Bottas forced it so hard. I don't buy that. It's a race.
The whole thing was just him talking himself into a hole. It was just, I was just, when he was talking about it, I'm just thinking,
big old learning point for Russell there.
Yeah, it's a
big old learning point.
Character building moment. And hopefully he'll come out of it better.
2 weeks
our
off.
White
we'll
default text on. We've had the default white text on black background apology now, as is the standard issue.
Sheepish.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, the sheepish white text on black background. It is the standard issue form of apology on social media. We've received that now. Maybe Toto has given him a bit of tough love and helped him get his head straight, which is what he needs.
That was almost one of your predictions this year. It wasn't quite an apology on a black background white text. It was more of I've contracted COVID on a black background with white text.
That could still happen.
No, it could still happen. It could still happen, but that is definitely not a point for you with that sheepish apology. It does not count. Just pointing it out there now. I've got them all in the back of my head, you see.
Good.
But Williams almost scored points, so I would have would have won that one. But yeah, Bottas and Russell, what a fiasco that was.
Yeah. Yeah, the blame, like I say, the blame game just is not really as interesting as the wider implications for both drivers. It's interesting they both had what the other lacked. Bottas didn't
Yeah,
have the pace and Russell did, but Bottas was much cooler and calmer after the incident, whereas Russell wasn't.
I think he hurt himself a little bit. He sounded horrendous over the radio. He was properly
Mm.
winded, but that impact was mega, like was absolutely ridiculous. And and the barrier as well didn't need any work doing to it. It just bounced the cars back and was ready to go again. I thought, well, that just goes to show how safe these tracks are in the current era of Formula One.